here. We're live. Hi, everybody. Joe Chaffee, Fios One News, Long Island, and Fios One News, New Jersey.
And Joe Rayo, Fios One News, Lower Hudson Valley. And Joe, man and women are very adaptable creatures. We have been so accustomed to the frigidity over the last 24 to 36 hours, and now, as we go into Tuesday with the much lighter winds that we're anticipating, and also even just the slightest little bump upward in the temperature, people by mid or late afternoon tomorrow might actually be dancing in the street and thinking that spring is on the way.
Yeah, it was just downright horrible this morning. It hurt to be outside. It really did. You don't get too many days like that. Yeah, some days it gets uncomfortable, but to actually be in physical pain when you're outside, that's pushing it. Welcome to tonight's version of the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Of course, all of this, by the way, precipitated by the precipitation that we had over the weekend with this rather impressive storm. So I guess you want to do any kind of post-mortem. I did a rant on Facebook yesterday, and I did another one on YouTube today, kind of going expanding on my point.
I'm not happy with the performance of any of the models, the forecast models.
Oh, they were god awful.
They were just absolutely horrendous. I knew we were in huge trouble 1 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning, when I was making comparisons to what the models had predicted versus the actual temperatures. And we had in one case something like a 15-degree discrepancy. I knew it was Newburgh, I think it was Newburgh. One of the models was saying that at 1 o'clock a.m. on Sunday morning, the temperature at Newburgh would be 36 degrees, and it turned out to be 21. I
know. The same happened in parts of Rockland County. This is also a good time to kind of emphasize, folks, that when we're talking in terms of a forecast, I think most of you understand this, what I'm about to say, but just in case, because apparently there are people who seem to be under the impression that when we're speaking in weather, and that we're actually only speaking to one zip code, yours, not yours, yours. Okay, so please bear in mind that when we give a forecast, when we're talking about what's going on here, we have to speak about it in general terms. So it's really your job to look at maps, look to see where the snow forecasts are on the map and where you are in relation to that. You should be able to look on a map and know where you're located. I can't tell you, Joe, and this really bugs me, because I don't think at any time did we even remotely hint that coastal areas were going to get a foot of snow out of this.
No.
At any time in the lead-in up until going into the weekend. And it became very clear, certainly Friday, that this was going to be a problem for coastal areas to hold on to snow for other than a short period of time, that there might be a light accumulation that would be put down, and then gradually it would just change over to rain, and anything that was there will be washed away anyway. The big issue was, of course, for the inland spots. I can't tell you how many people that are in coastal areas in central New Jersey, in Long Island, in New York City, somehow thought that a foot of snow was going to happen. I don't know where you got that from. I really don't. And I'm serious about this. It's very important. There might come a time. Joe and I have a very even keel approach. We don't go off the deep end on stuff. We're not apocalyptic, okay? But there might come a time one day where there's something serious might happen, and you need to be able to consume the information and digest it correctly, and not in a haphazard way. It could be problematic if that's the case. I just want to kind of lay it there, because it's very frustrating when you give out a piece of information that turns out to be not perfect but close enough, and it's completely misinterpreted.
Well, we did at one point in the proceedings say that New York City possibly could get 3 to 6 inches. So we did say maybe in some cases a half a foot, not a full foot.
But even so, it doesn't warrant a response.
But you say, oh, you guys went for a foot.
Well,
right?
But also from a more practical standpoint, government officials need to do their job, which is to, of course, convey risk, and I totally understand that. They want to make sure road crews are out and all the rest of it, but I think the aftermath of the, let's call it the non-reaction from the November 15th mess, okay, which really stems from the fact that they don't budget for snow removal in November.
Right.
Okay? They don't. And they don't budget for overtime for snow removal in November. So they wouldn't authorize overtime in order to have crews out ready. That's where what all of this boils down to. So now, of course, we've seen these overreactions. I said this on my YouTube channel, and I'll say it here. I think the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, I think governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, might think about doing what the governor of Pennsylvania does, and that is that they have a state meteorologist who, when the governor is giving a press conference about a storm, when it comes time to talking about the weather specifics, he gives it to the state meteorologist to do.
Right.
And the governor stands aside and lets the weather guy do his thing. And I think that's important because I heard a lot of things in these press conferences on Friday from both governors in both states that, let's just say did not make much meteorological sense. And I just think it would, probably be a much better service if you have a weather person doing the weather part of your emergency management presentation.
Well, they both the New York governor and especially the New Jersey governor like to use the forecasters as a punching bag, I think. If it comes up not quite the way in their minds they think the forecast is going to be or should be, they immediately point to the guys that do the forecast and say, well, with all due respect to the people at the National Weather Service or at this weather office, they're not always accurate, blah, blah, blah.
Well, with all due respect, we have no respect for them. It's basically what they're saying. The mayor of New York, I believe, was quoted as saying that you shouldn't trust meteorologists. Okay, that's a nice thing to say. Really, that's helpful. It really is helpful.
Then you shouldn't trust some politicians either.
Yeah,
I don't want to get into this thing.
I know. Okay, we can go down. Look, the bottom line is we want to get the best information we can out to you. We do the best we can with the forecast. Let's not overreact and go off the deep end. If you wound up seeing a forecast for 2 inches and you didn't see anything, you didn't see anything. Okay, and in the meantime, other people had to deal with ice and snow, not in northwest New Jersey, in the Hudson Valley, interior Connecticut. So just because it didn't happen in your zip code doesn't mean it didn't happen in somebody else's zip code.
It's and there's this whole thing about snow. How much snow are we going to get? What are we going to get? Snow. And it turned out that this particular storm was, at least in this immediate area, it was more prolific in producing ice and sleet, which is far more dangerous than snow. But again, everybody's got snow on the mind, not and even back on Friday, I remember twisting the dial on the radio, and we're going to get another snow event, And
I think deep down, the people who expressed the most anger and directed at us for not getting snow is because really secretly deep down inside, they really want a foot of snow.
Right.
I really believe that.
Yeah.
I really believe that they won't admit it, but they really want a foot of snow on the ground, and they didn't get it. So somehow that's our fault, and they weren't supposed to get it in the first place. So there really isn't anything to blame.
Well,
or
and also we have a I won't say friend, I will say acquaintance, mutual acquaintance, and I'm not going to mention who it is or whatever. But I got an email, I got a message or messenger on Facebook. A week in advance of the storm we just went through, and saying something to the effect like, "says Well, I'm not going to take down any of my Christmas decorations. I'm on my lights until I get that first snowfall." And he said, "I have a feeling." And he says to me, he says, "I think you know, and I know that it's coming." In other words, making the illusion that what we had just gone through was going to be the one.
Right.
And this person lives on Long Island, and he was so sure, as were so many, this was going to be the one that was going to give them their first big snowfall since mid-November.
There was no meteorological reason for it to have happened on Long Island but go on.
And I said, I'm glad you are confident about it, because I certainly am not. I don't think I know, and I don't think anybody out there who looks at all of these maps knows exactly what's going to happen, because we knew even several days in advance it could have been snow, it could have been ice and sleet, it could have been even plain rain. And guess what? We got everything.
Well,
So,
if he leaves his decorations out long enough, it's always quite possible that he may still have them up in June, in which case we can just say how clever he is that he's decorating early for next Christmas. Yeah. You know, it works for me.
I'm sad, though, Joe, that New York City Central Park ended up recording 0.2 of an inch, a whole 0.2 of an inch, Saturday evening and Saturday night with this last system, because, as one of our viewers pointed out, there had never been a situation where December and January both ended up with just a trace.
That has
gone by the boards.
That's gone by the boards. Now we have to see if we can get that over 1 inch. Every winter there's a snow hole. If you look at maps of most winters, there's always, you'll see this area that gets a lot of snow, and then somewhere in there there's like this, almost like just a hole where the snow seems to avoid it. And there are a number of winters going back where the snow hole was down in South Jersey to, say, just south of Washington, D.C., or in various other spots. But the areas in and around New York City, on the whole, have basically been spared the curse of the snow hole.
Right.
Well, this year, that snow hole really kind of extends from just south of Philadelphia to about Boston, and maybe a little bit north and west of the coast. And, you know, that's kind of where it is right now, because if you go up north and west, the snow amounts for the winter are above normal. If you go south of Philadelphia down to Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and into the Carolinas, the snowfalls there, in Virginia, the snowfalls there so far this winter have been above normal. But we're kind of in this snow hole.
Almost like an invisible glass dome over.
Pretty much.
Something like that.
I mean, you'd think that it wouldn't go on forever. At some point, you know, something's got to happen up here. I can't imagine we're going to go the next 2 months without seeing at least a couple of accumulating snows along the way.
Well, you know, it's a funny thing. If you knock out that November storm,
well, then it's nothing.
6.4.
Right, then it's nothing.
Then up until this point in time in the winter, we only had like what, 0.2 of an inch.
0.7, because we had half an inch at Central Park at half an inch last Friday morning.
They did?
Yeah, from that little system Thursday night to Friday morning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're actually at 0.7.
All right.
So they basically need a handful of flakes to have over an inch for the month.
Get a whole inch out of that. So.
Well, let's see. We've got a couple of. See if we got anybody. I do see some stuff on the chat board here. Jeannie Marie Lemulik is pointing out that you and I are not psychic. Sometimes we're psycho, but we're definitely not psychic.
Do you remember? I think it was 1969.
Thank you, by the way, from what you said. I really appreciate. We both appreciate it.
1969, Channel 5 on Saturday nights. They had a guy. He was British. His name was Maurice Woodruff, and he was supposedly a psychic, and he was able to tell you what they used to say. Maurice Woodruff knows more about tomorrow than you remember about yesterday. and he lasted for about, the show lasted for about 6 weeks. Everything that he had predicted always fell by the wayside. I'm glad we've lasted more than 6 weeks in our profession of forecasting. So,
well, you are in what, year 40?
In June it'll be 41 years. Don't remind me.
And in August, for me, it will be the big 40.
Right.
And Sunday I'm going to be the big 60 years old. 60.
It's only a number, Joe.
60. I used to kid around about age. Get to age of 32, I just went above freezing. Okay. Yeah. And when I got to about 35 or 40, I used to say I changed over to rain.
Right.
Now that I'm at 60, I've gone over to drizzle and fog. So, but anyhow,
right. William Huber.
You know what? Bill Huber's east of me, and he had it, and this was really odd. It wasn't odd. It was actually. I kind of expected it this morning. When I went outside this morning from my house, I'm in Central Long Island, so from Central Long Island east, it was a solid overcast.
Right.
And the sky had that kind of whitish look to it, which it gets when we get Long Island sound effect snow showers that came in. And while I don't think they happened where I was, but just east of me in points east, there were snow showers that came in, gave light sugar coating, whitened the ground in a few spots.
Right.
That was active right into this afternoon. And in fact, Montauk today only got to a high of 11 because of the fact that they were sitting in clouds all day long.
And the water spout.
And the water spout, yes, that was amazing to see. I'm trying to figure out what was going on that actually caused that, because from the standpoint of we had a screaming northwest wind over the warm water. I mean,
right.
it must have been some really weird mesoscale phenomena.
You see that sometimes with the Great Lakes, in situations like this,
where you have brutally cold air.
Yeah, and you get and there are reports of water spouts even on the Great Lakes.
And just to make a point, I want to bring up the surface map, Joe, because this was this air mass actually was a little different than how we usually get the cold air masses. I mean, usually they come down from northwest Canada, they move into the northern plains, they cross into the Great Lakes, and then by the time they get here, they're still cold, but they've been modified to some degree. You get those crazy cold numbers in the Dakotas, but then they don't really make it here. But if you look at where the isobars are and the low, which is sitting in Newfoundland, our air actually flowed down from Greenland, across through Labrador, and then down into southeastern Canada and right down the Hudson Valley. This is how, this is, not only is it bitter cold air, but it has hardly any opportunity to modify.
Right. Even when you get those shots of, very cold weather from northern Canada, if they happen to pass across Hudson Bay, James Bay, and down across the Great Lakes, they actually serve as at least somewhat to modify that air mass, and so it's not quite as bitter or as frigid as where it came from. But if you don't have any chance to modify that air on that straight north wind down from Greenland, I mean, there's that body of water, and I'm not even sure what it is.
What, in here?
Baffin Bay, or whatever.
Yeah, it's Baffin Bay.
But and that's probably iced over. So
if we had gotten, you probably should be. In a way, we should be thankful that we didn't get any snow cover out of this down near the coast, because if we did get extensive snow cover, say down through New Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, and over New York City and Long Island with this kind of setup, we probably would have been down about 10 degrees lower this morning than we actually were, maybe more. It got to below zero in northwest Jersey. I think it got to a goose egg at Poughkeepsie.
Yeah.
And there might have been some spotty 1 below, 2 below zero readings in a few places.
I'm going for 2 below. For tonight, because we've got clear skies. We're going to have winds diminish somewhat toward daybreak. That'll help, but there won't be radiational cooling. But more importantly than anything else, the Hudson Valley did get a few inches of snow and ice. I picked up at my house in Putnam Valley 3.6 inches of snow, then put about 2/10 of an inch of ice on top of that.
Right.
So it was slick.
And
we were running around. My wife and I were running around like crazy yesterday, desperately trying to get rid of as much as we could, because we knew that when that cold air started rushing in the afternoon, everything was going to, freeze solid. If you waited, by the way, if any of you were watching and you just said, it's a 3-day weekend, I don't have to do anything today, I'll wait until the holiday tomorrow to do it, you probably found yourself in quite a pickle today trying to clear away all that ice that was out there.
Can you imagine? Yeah. All right, so let's run through the NAM, because what's really strange, Joe, is you think with all this bitter cold air, how is it that this weather system on Wednesday coming in is not going to produce any snow? But that is the case. The warm air is going to really surge aloft, and we can actually show you that. We'll show you the 850 level or the 4,700 foot level just from the beginning. Actually, rolling it back 3 days takes us to Saturday, and there's your warm air that came up and changed everything to freezing rain and rain, collapsed back in. Now, of course, we saw the outcome of the rapidly falling temperatures late yesterday afternoon and this morning, and out it goes, and you start to get that warmer air coming back. And we're looking at about 4,700 feet here, and when we get to Wednesday morning, it's already above zero. So I think the key issue for Wednesday morning is if and it's a big if precipitation were to arrive around or just after daybreak, the ground would be very, very cold.
Right.
And even though the actual air temperature might conceivably be above 32, but you could still have a situation where any falling precipitation would freeze on contact. You could have a couple of hours of freezing rain. So if it holds off until noontime or 1 o'clock, I don't think it'll be a problem. And then we're going to wait for a front to come through, and cold air starts to come back later Thursday afternoon. So why don't we just run through the NAM, and you'll see that it has the. Let me just make sure you guys have it in the shot here. You can see what happens here. A little bit of freezing rain. This is as of ending 1 o'clock. So during the morning, again, if it's a little faster, it might be problematic. So we might want to pay a little attention to this for Wednesday.
And then, as we progress through the rest of Wednesday, it all very quickly goes over to rain. And it looks like we're going to have a pretty good shot of rain. As you can see, the yellow shades entering the picture. We could even go to moderate or maybe even a bit of heavy rainfall during the day on Thursday. And then once the front moves on by, boom, in comes that very cold air. Not as cold as we've just gone through, but certainly a drop backward in the temperature trend after Thursday. So 20s tomorrow, 30s, let's say, on Wednesday, 40s on Thursday, and then we tumble back into the 30s and eventually the 20s. Probably for the weekend.
Right. Now, just real quick while we have a little bit of time, because rather than go to the long, looking at the long range, because everything is just such a mess, I want to bring up I've discussed this today. I talked about this on my YouTube show tonight. Let me just bring this map of the Pacific up. You and I were we were talking about all the differences with all the models, and talking with a couple of other people and just sort of looking around. I wonder, at least from the standpoint of the models, that the Pacific may be the problem. And this is a look at what the upper air jet stream, Joe, is supposed to look like in the Pacific tonight. And, when you look at it, it doesn't quite look like you would usually see the state of things in the Pacific. First off, you got this fire hose that runs about halfway across the Pacific, this long jet. Back at the end of December, we had it going all the way across. Right. And it took it, all that milder air that we had to deal with, but now it's only running halfway across, and I don't know. It just looks it looks chaotic out here. You've got a ridge off in the East Pacific. You've got a couple of upper lows sitting out, one off of Japan, another one in the Aleutians, yet another one up in Northwest Alaska. Then you got this. This big upper high up here that extends up from Siberia up into the Arctic regions, displacing all this southward. And then you've got this cutoff low to the east of Hawaii, halfway between Hawaii and the Baja Peninsula here. The Pacific just looks like a chaotic mess, and I wonder if this is what is causing models to just do crazy things. I mean, they really did kind of nutty things today. They were all over the place, jumping back and forth, flipping from run to run. I just don't feel like there's much use in even looking at the weekend and into early next week, because I can't make any sense of it. I don't know if you were able to figure anything out on this, because I sure couldn't.
Well, I think one of the discussions I read was that some kind of a system would be coming into California, Lower California, around Thursday or so, and how it translates into a possible coastal disturbance in the southern United States or off the southeast coast by Sunday. And that's the system that some of the models have picked up on and have tried to blow up into a massive system somewhere along the eastern seaboard of the United States by the beginning of next week. But then again, other models are just saying, it's too flat.
And the GFS has nothing but cold fronts coming through.
Yeah.
So I honestly, I don't know what to make of any of this down the road. I think there, and I just, pulling up the GFS forecast for early Sunday morning. I mean, the Pacific still looks kind of chaotic. A trough.
You don't often see a ridge Normally you would see a trough, let's say, adjacent to the Pacific Northwest
Right. Now
coast.
you got a ridge here.
Now you got a ridge.
Right. And then you've got a trough that's about halfway down, extends down east of Hawaii, because the flow, when you look off the from just south of Japan, you actually have a split flow here, Joe. One jet going straight east toward Hawaii, and another jet that comes up here and heads towards Alaska. I mean, it's kind of just a chaotic mess. So I think you're going to probably, I think we're going to just be looking at models for the next 3 or 4 days and have no real clear-cut vision as to how or what's going to happen later in the weekend and into next week.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when I always, when it's problematic or there's some discontinuities among the models, on my 7-day tonight, I just put a big question mark Sunday and Monday, and I said, look, we may have another big storm next week. We may not have another big storm. And the running consensus, at least everybody who works here, said, let's not have a big storm next week.
Yeah, we don't, we
really don't need
I want my birthday in peace, personally. All right, so I think that pretty well sums it up. We can just kind of hang it here at this point. A little less harsh overnight, and on Tuesday, back into the 40s on Wednesday. And then, Thursday we have some more rain to get through. Right. I thought maybe there was a small chance it could end as a little wet snow on the back end in northwest Jersey, northern New Jersey, maybe, or maybe in the Hudson Valley. But who knows?
It might, but
usually it just shuts off.
It might, Rabbit.
It might, Rabbit. It might.
But I think right now just broad brush it with wetness and milder temperatures for Thursday. We'll see if anything comes out of it at the end, it really doesn't look like anything cataclysmic. Friday, noticeably colder. The weekend hopefully will be dry, tranquil, cold, with no problems, and we'll see what happens maybe later Sunday or Monday, and I don't even want to think about it. So
right, and snow lovers out there, I know you're just kind of anxiously awaiting. I've been a little tough on the snow weenies lately, but we're all at peace again here. So let's move forward. I know you're still looking for that first accumulating, really the first snow since that system back in November. I don't know what to tell you. We're kind of at the mercy of whatever the weather patterns going to take us on.
You guys wanted cold weather. You were screaming about it all through December. Right. Where's the cold weather? You got the cold weather.
Well, and remember, the pattern change you want and the pattern change you get are not necessarily the same thing.
Right.
So as it turned out, at least so far, we actually have had storminess, but not enough blocking to keep some cold air down to coastal areas, and that's just the way it is sometimes. I don't know what else to add to that. That's some years you're like it's like being in a bowling alley and you're the head pin, and every storm that comes hits that head pin. And then some years you're the bowl. It's like a bowling alley where you're the head pin, and every ball that comes is a gutter ball, either on the left side or on the right side. And
we're talking about like that TV show "Make That Spare." Remember that?
Oh,
on
right.
Saturday afternoon.
Oh boy, you're taking this way back, Joe.
Oh yes, well
you're dating our persons here.
Doesn't matter.
All right,
we're here. But yeah, Joe's absolutely right. There have been some winters. Well, the so-called Snowmageddon winter, right? 2011 or.
Well, there's a few of them. Which one?
I mean,
the actual Snowmageddon storm?
No, I'm just talking about there are winters where you only have to sneeze and you get 2 inches of snow.
Yeah, like 9, 10, 10, 11.
Right.
13, 14, 14, 15, depending on where you were.
Right.
If you're on Long Island, there's the New Buffalo. It just snows all the time.
And then,
so yeah, this is
and if you're a snow lover, this is the kind of winter where you keep coming back to the department store and saying, "It don't work." You've got to fix this.
6 above normal snow winters in a row has never happened.
Right.
Okay? And we have that. So we're working on 7. That's never happened. So if it comes out, Joe, a subpar year and a big subpar year would not be a shocker. It's it's going to happen eventually. So you still have a good 2 months of, especially after last year, since we had snows right into after the first day of spring. So with the four nor'easters of the apocalypse. So you still got 2 months to put down a few snowfalls or more. So just, I don't know what else to tell you guys. You have to just be patient.
As I mentioned, you're looking at the Central Park records during the decades of the 70s, the 80s, and 90s. Look at these 10-year blocks. 2 or 3 of those were above normal years in terms of snowfall. The others, the 6 or 7 others, were below normal years. All of a sudden, it flipped when we had the 2000s and the 20, and now in the 2010s, it's just reversed. We've had 7 or 8, above normal years, and 1 or 2 below normal years. And so far, it's looking more and more like this could be one of those 1 or 2 below normal years.
Right. If things stay the same, which they probably won't, because now that we've put that on the table, you figure that
now we get 30
it's time
inches.
Time to swing it the other way.
We get 30 inches of snow in February.
Hey, listen,
we'll get another 15 inches in March.
By the way, another statistic that stands out, we've actually had at least one 10-inch snowstorm every year since the winter of 2012-2013. And that is a phenomenal statistic, because if you go back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you can count the 10-inch storms on one hand.
Right.
All right. So we've had actually one every single year, and if you look at the long-term stats, we're really supposed to only get a 10-inch storm maybe 1 out of every 3 years. Right. So we're really pushing the envelope. Like pushing the envelope, 2 standard deviations from the mean here, folks.
Absolutely.
So just bear that in mind. All right, we got to go because the top of the hour is coming. FiOS 1 News Long Island and New Jersey for me,
and FiOS 1 News Lower Hudson Valley for me.
I can't have Ivan getting mad at me again after last week. All right, have a good night, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.